to Dawn News English. I'm Nadia Naqi with you for our show 20 Minutes. We have with us Fawzia Yazdani, who's a policy expert, and we have Barrister Muhammad Ata Bandial. Thank you so much for joining us. And of course, we'll be discussing what the decision is out today by the Supreme Court. They had taken a suo motu notice. All the chronology of the events is, I think, very much in front of our viewers. How the bench that was a 9-member bench dissolved to a 5-member because some of the judges, they had reclused from the bench, and they had said, you know, they're not going to be a part of it. Today, the decision is out, and elections in Punjab and KP are to be held within 90 days. That's what the Supreme Court verdict is. The verdict is 3-2. There's a lot of legal discussion around the decision, and also from the day the suo motu notice had been taken regarding the elections in KP and Punjab. To my surprise, actually, the question that the Supreme Court had taken the suo motu notice on was that who's going to be deciding on the poll date, that is, who's going to be giving the date for the elections in KP and Punjab. However, the decision does not talk about that. In fact, it says that the Election Commission in the case of Punjab is going to be consulting with the president because the governor of Punjab did not dissolve the assembly on the advice of the chief minister, the then chief minister, whereas in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, the governor should be consulting with the election commission on the poll date. Because in case of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, the governor had dissolved the assembly on the advice of the chief minister. First, I'm going to be taking Barrister Ahmed on this. What would you say on the verdict of Supreme Court? Have they answered the question that who's going to be announcing the date, or is it leading to more confusion?
Well, I personally believe that the judgment of the Supreme Court has clarified a lot of mist and a lot of thick air. And the most important aspect that needed some clarification, we had a judgment from the Honorable Lahore High Court. And in that judgment, it was clearly mentioned that ECP is directed to issue a date or announce an election date. Of course, the word immediately was used there. However, the opposition went into an appeal as well, and at the same time sought clarification. So the Supreme Court of Pakistan had only one question, but there were 2 or 3 questions that emanated from that question. So in my humble view and opinion, they've answered that question that yes, once the governor refuses to issue a date or there is no action on his part, assuming that the assemblies were dissolved by him, then of course, in both the cases, the president can, of course, exercise that power. And that is to be done with ECP. Now, the consultation here is not that ECP can refuse that. ECP will, of course, be facilitating, will be conducting the elections under Article 2183. Therefore, it is appropriate that the date comes from them. So, essentially speaking, or ideally speaking, under the judgment, it is the Election Commission of Pakistan which is going to basically be holding the elections and also be responsible for announcing the date, which has been clearly mentioned in the operative paragraph of the judgment, where it has been said that ECP, after consultation, will propose a date, which will then be announced by the president in that case. And of course, in the KP's case, the situation was slightly different. So from my point of view, I think the judgment is absolutely clear. It very clearly mentions that who is responsible for doing what.
Okay. What about you, Fawzia? Do you feel that the judgment is absolutely clear, or was the Constitution silent and it was interpreted by the Supreme Court?
Thank you, Nadia, for having me. I mean, with due respect, Ahmed is a brilliant lawyer, so I'm not in a position to contest the legal position. But as a electoral expert, what I would say, the question was not 90 days, as has been said. I have not read the complete judgment, so I will not go deeper into it. Election Commission of Pakistan is mandated by the Constitution to conduct election. It's not mandated to announce the date of election, and that's for the reason because the authors of the Constitution, I think at that point of time, thought that as time would progress, the parliamentarians would be progressive enough to undertake the electoral reforms, and the areas where Constitution is silent, they would work on it. The preamble of the Constitution is very clear that the power to decide, to write the constitution is rested with the parliament and elected representative of the parliament. So no one, in my opinion, and my very layman opinion, no one is authorized to amend, add, delete in the constitution. When it comes to announcing the date of the constitution, Ahmed is absolutely right. Under Article 2183, Election Commission has immense power to want to organize and conduct the election. No government, no administrative authority has this power to say that we do not have the provision to facilitate you, be it fiscal resources, be it administrative resources, be it human resources. So for me, that was not the question. The question for me,
but this is of course after the election schedule is announced, right?
Yes, but for me, the point was that who is going to announce the election? This has happened for the first time, that 2 provinces have been pushed into general election before the rest of the country. For me, unanswered question remains, and maybe Ahmed can explain it now, that if Supreme Court had taken it up under 184.3, which is about the fundamental rights being facilitated, then right of representation is also a fundamental right. So not holding an election is a fundamental right being violated, but on the other hand, there is census being undertaken under the Council of Common Interest, which is also a constitutional body. There was a decision that last election would be conditionally used for holding 2018 election, and next election would be based on new delimitation on the basis of fresh election. So we have a decision of another constitutional body as well. What happens, fine, you can hold the election now in 90 days, and then 60% of Pakistan, Punjab and KP would be on old census, the other would be on the new census. The issue would be, because on the basis of population, your constituencies are delimited. The number of voters into a constituency also has to be decided accordingly. So what if it happens that later the population is more, and a new seat has to be, kind of carved in? So they would be lopsided, and then of course the caretaker government and all that. So there's a lot to it. I think that has added into confusion than resolving it.
Okay, now because Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf is really celebrating the judgment, we saw the chairman Tehreek-e-Insaf, hailing this judgment, and I think they're pretty sure that the elections are now going to be taking place as the Supreme Court judgment is binding. Emma, do you really see that happening? Because to me, it looks like that, the matters shall prevail in the courts more than required, and this is not going to be so easy in holding the elections as per the judgment today.
I think it's a very interesting question to start. Before I answer that, the first part, I totally agree that the matters of political importance should not be decided in courts. I have been stating that again and again at the cost of repetition. I will state that again, that it is the parliamentarians who are supposed to decide this. But it is so unfortunate that after 5 years, the best possible argument that the parliamentarians can come up with is financial emergency and the census. I can assure you that even if 2 elections take place without the census, the other 2 provinces and the federation will also go without this, because it is not at all their priority, and this has been happening for so many years under the Constitution of Pakistan. Now let's first explain the constitutional position. Under Article 107, it says that the term of the assembly shall be 5 years unless dissolved. Now these are the mandatory requirements. Now, under 105.1, there was an advice which was tendered by the chief minister, which was accepted by the governor. And the governor, of course, didn't accept it formally, but there was a 48-hour gap after which it stood dissolved. Now, these are all mandatory requirements of the constitution. At this point in time, governor should have given a date, but he refused, and the matter was put into limbo. It was not put into limbo because they were very serious about census or there was any financial emergency. It is purely a matter of political importance once again, because 2 political parties are arch rivals and they very well know their political position at the moment. I wish it had been for the census or any other, the following of the constitutional letter and spirit. I would have been the first person to do so. So it is mandatory under the constitution that the elections are to take place in 90 days. This is exactly what the Supreme Court held as well. Further went on to say that this is a unique situation. This issue has, by the way, been addressed in Justice Jawal's judgment, which was passed in the Lahore High High Court, it has been addressed that since there is no mention of a particular institution which is responsible for announcing the date in the absence of governor's decision, in that event, since the Election Commission of Pakistan is mandated with the task of holding free and fair elections under 2183, therefore, we direct them to announce the date as well. Supreme Court, creating an offshoot, said that Election Commission of Pakistan first of all, we need to understand that under 57(1) of the Election Act 2017, they have held, the Supreme Court of Pakistan, that President is competent to issue a date. Number one. Number two, once the President wants to do that, he needs to consult the Election Commission of Pakistan. So now Supreme Court has directed the Election Commission of Pakistan that the consultation on your part is to provide a suitable date. Because, mind you, the Election Commission of Pakistan and a few others had mentioned in court that we are in a position to conduct on the 25th of April. It won't be 9th of April, but we can extend. So now the 90-day time period cannot be followed by whatever reason it exists. However, under Article 254, the dispensation has been given that if there is any timeline in the Constitution which cannot be met, that can be dispensed with under 254. So that, using that power, Supreme Court has now directed ECP to come up with a suitable date. If they agree with the 9th of April, well and good, which the President has already announced. But if they want the date to be changed, then in the consultation process, they need to come up with that particular date, and that date must be mentioned there. And one last thing.
No, but one thing. I'm so sorry to interrupt you, Barrister Bansota. That the Constitution stipulates very clearly that 90 days is the period where you're going to be holding the elections. In this case, if the 90 days, the judgment says that the Election Commission is therefore directed to use its utmost efforts to immediately propose, keeping in mind 57-58 of the 2017 Act, a date to the President that is compliant with the aforesaid deadline. If such a course is not available, then the Election Commission shall in like manner propose a date for holding the poll that deviates to the barest minimum from the aforesaid deadline. Does this not mount to rewriting the Constitution when the Constitution is pretty clear?
I'll tell you why. Because when you announce the election, there is a 54-day period or 56-day, period, whereby the election schedule has to be announced. So practically, it is not possible, even if the date is announced today, that 56-day schedule cannot be reduced. So the date automatically goes beyond 90 days. It is that particular situation that the Supreme Court of Pakistan is catering for. Now, we also should be cognizant of the fact that Supreme Court has held that the governor in KPK's position has been found in breach of his constitutional obligation. That has been very categorically stated. And as a student of law, I wanted to find out that who is responsible for this entire fiasco. It is not the financial emergency, trust me, I can assure you on that. It is not the census. It is definitely the political expediency on part of the PDM and all. So we need to understand why was this constitutional timeline not followed, and whosoever has deliberately done that must be proceeded against. And in my humble view, because I was speaking to Governor KPK, and his entire response was that we will follow the judgment and letter spirit. And I said, would you like to follow that part where it states that you're in breach of your constitutional obligations? And he said, we will follow the judgment. So my point is, it has been deliberately delayed. Any constitutional timeline, the Constitution itself must be implemented in letter and spirit, which the parliamentarians have failed to do, and it's very unfortunate. Which is why the matters land in court, which is the most undesirable thing for any Democrat, to see things happening in court and then you start criticizing that. Because the chief, sorry.
So I just want to, if there is a breach of constitutional obligation by the Governor KP, Fawzia, what would your comment be when the President of Pakistan and his counsel yesterday at the hearing had said that we would like to take this back because we've probably infringed
we have overreached.
Yes, we have overreached the rights because in that matter, in that province, the governor had dissolved the assembly.
You see, I totally agree with what Ahmed said, that it's a prerogative of the parliament, and there is political issues of political expediency involved in it. It should not have gone to the court. But having said that, we also know that the earlier census was delayed for 20 years, almost 20 years, and then this one has the issue. This may not be the cardinal sin or the cardinal issue in hand, but still it is an issue. And the financial emergency, if we think that we are not in a financial, nosedive, then I think we're living in another planet. When M says that, Governor KP is breaching his constitutional obligation, I would say yes, he is breaching his constitutional obligation because he kind of moved on that and he should have done that. But then why didn't President first? The governors are under the federation. So President could have spoken to the two governors first before announcing the date, which it did not. The president desperately needs good lawyers and good section officers, I would say, who can do the research for him, because his lawyer did say that he overreached his discretionary power. So where would we hold it? Which constitution? Right now, the way I see is there are constitutional personalities and constitutional institution, and they are being pitched against each other. For example, let's take it now that earlier the Lahore High Court single bench judgment that Ahmed referred to also said that there are rights which are implied and not expressly stated in the constitution, and since it's not expressly stated, so adding 2183 with 115, I think this is what happened. This is what Election Commission would do, and Election Commission did consult with the governor. What happened? Nothing. So even now they would consult with the president. What if it still kind of ends up in a knot? 56 days, as Ahmed said, is the time period. That's why I earlier said that Election Commission has to be ready to hold election within 60 days, because if the assembly completes its tenure, and it's 90, because if it's an unforced situation, they would need more time. So I don't think it's an issue of Election Commission holding the election. The question still is who will bell the cat, and
yes, exactly.
who is using his constitutional powers appropriately. Why? I think judiciary has to introspect in parallel that why the whole bench and the whole spiel has been questioned. Why a Supreme Court had to not, for me, and I may absolutely be wrong, and Ahmed can correct me on it, this issue was under consideration in different high courts. And when Supreme Court took it over, they probably, to me, maybe they don't trust them to do it. So it was done, and there was the differences of one. If you take 3-2, 4-3, whatever is the right number, I would take 3-2 as it was said. So everyone knew this judgment beforehand. What didn't he?
Okay, so because
I don't want
my
to
time is getting over, I would just very quickly, Ahmed, I want you to answer this one. What happened to the question that was raised by Justice Athar Minallah when the Chief Justice of Pakistan had said that he would take that into action, into question also, that whether the assemblies dissolved should have been dissolved and there should be a suo motu, and that nothing on that has been said.
I think that question was jointly raised firstly by Mr. Manila and then Justice Shah, and I personally don't agree with that question. I'll tell you why. Because the Constitution in Article 105 says, subject to the Constitution, Governor is bound to act on the advice of the Chief Minister. How can the courts question the authority of the Chief Minister? We all know that we live in a democracy where the democracies are being governed, all political parties are being governed by the political leaders. Article 63 is ample testimony to that. So even if, for the sake of argument, Imran Khan was behind it, but once the Chief Minister had signed the summary and sent it to the Governor, there is absolutely no way courts can question was there a gentleman behind that, or were there 3 gentlemen behind that, or maybe there were 20 gentlemen behind that. So I think that question in the first place should not have been brought up, but once again, since it was brought up by one of the learned judges, and Justice Athar Manila and Justice Mansoor Ali Shah have passed several judgments in the past. As far as Mr. Mansoor Ali Shah is concerned, I would also like to point out that there were cases regarding the GIDC cess that were involved, that was applied by the government. In those cases as well, intra-court appeals were pending. But Justice Mansoor Ali Shah directly heard the cases in the Supreme Court of Pakistan. But we didn't see any objection. But today, the objection was raised regarding Mohtarma Benazir Bhutto's case, which was just also raised by Yazdani Sahiba. And I would like to respond quickly to that. A case was decided, the intra-court appeals were entertained, and there was an adjournment of about 10 days. So Chief Justice Mr. Bandial said that in such an important matter, where the election timeline is question, why would you adjourn the matter for 10 days? Therefore, there is absolute need to take up this matter at the earliest. And the High Court was silent and sitting on it. So maybe they wouldn't have decided for the next 6 months. This is a question that required decision on day-to-day basis. When the single judge had decided the matter in 4 or 5 days, why couldn't the intra-court appeal bench decide it in 2 days? It was just 20 minutes max, and you could see that happen. But once again, the bench which has decided, it was a diverse bench, and I respect the opinion which has been authored by dissenting judges. Dissent is how you develop.
Let's say if it is not implemented, what options does the Supreme Court has now? Because this was a suo motu case.
Well, if it is not implemented, first of all, it's a Article 220 violation, because all executive authority is bound to act and assess the Election Commission of Pakistan. So it will be a clear-cut case of contempt. So if Supreme Court proceeds in contempt and even then they are not willing to follow it, then I think we all know that who's behind them. So if we are not, and we're all silent in front of that power. So it has got nothing to do with the Constitution itself then it has all got to do with something else. So the Supreme Court is silent, Madam Jasdani is silent.
I think what Ahmed is saying is, who will bell the cat? And the cat is, I mean, there's an elephant in the room, we all know. And I don't know if Dawn can air what I would say. That's why I will hold myself.
Please stop.
There.
I don't want to go to the jail. Please stop.
No, you don't have.
Nobody's going to jail
because you're my lawyer. So you can't. But we have to realize that state, the Constitution and state acts as a human because it's run by human. So there are issues there, but it's not that big an issue which couldn't have been solved. Right now, it's over politicized. For me, it's over politicized. The justice has, as they say, as Ahmed would say, justice is seen to be done. For me, justice is seen to be done, but justice should be seen as transparent also. A decision should not be something which questions the integrity and the self-accountability of the system as well. So that's where I still have some issues which are unresolved, but maybe I'm not competent enough.
One last comment on one of the channels. On one of the channels, I said that it's a matter of not a uniform decision, but a uniform decision. So you can understand what I'm saying.
Right. With this, I must close the show. But towards the end, I'd like to add over here. We've seen all political parties in Pakistan conceding their powers to the mighty. But at the same time, even in this matter, I'd say that these are matters that should have been decided within the parliament. It's only the parliament that the Constitution says is supreme. And that supremacy, I don't see happening. Well, that's all for now. We can go on and on with our discussions. And of course, in days to come, let's see if the decision is implemented or not. In that case, what is going to happen? What more options this government has not to hold the elections within the stipulated time as given by the Supreme Court of Pakistan and the Constitution, and what the political impact is going to be in days to come. Thank you so much for joining us. With that, goodbye.